Hello and welcome to the Business Talk podcast. I'm your host Deepak. We are delighted to welcome Mrs. Rama Bijapurkar with us today. Mrs. Bijapurkar is a renowned business advisor, independent director, and author recognized for her expertise in India's market and consumer economy. A thought leader in business market strategy, she brings valuable consumer insights to business strategy, often referred to as providing the people lens to understanding India's economy. She has been a visiting faculty member at IIM Ahmedabad for over 2 decades, specializing in customer-based business strategy. Mrs. Bijapurkar has served on the boards of leading companies, including Cummins India, IIM Ahmedabad, and Apollo Hospitals, and has previously served on the boards of Infosys, Godrej Consumer, Mahindra and Mahindra Financial Services Limited, Nestle India, Crisil, ICICI Bank, and Axis Bank, among others. Her career includes roles at McKinsey Company, Marg Marketing Research Group, now Nielsen India, and Mode Services, now TNS India, before starting her own consulting practices. She is also the author of influential books such as Lilliput Land, We Are Like That Only, and Customer in the Boardroom. Mrs. Bijapurkar holds a BSc Honors degree in Physics from Delhi University and a postgraduate diploma in Management from IIM Ahmedabad. In this episode, Mrs. Rama Bijapurkar offers valuable insights from her recent book, Lilliput Land, How Small is Driving India's Mega Consumption Story. Please join me in welcoming Mrs. Rama Bijapurkar to our podcast, where we look forward to gaining valuable insights from her expertise on the topic. It's a genuine pleasure to have you with us today, Mrs. Rama Bijapurkar.
Thank you, Deepak. We've known each other for a while. Thank you very much for having me on this podcast.
Thank you, Mrs. Bijapurkar. In Lilliput Land, you emphasize that India's consumer market is driven by small consumers. So could you elaborate on what you mean by small consumers and how this differs from traditional view of India's market?
Right. I think India, we all know from the time that the BRICS report was published by Goldman Sachs many years ago that the large economies of the world are likely to be not the richest economies of the world. So India is a large economy, but it's made up of lots and lots and lots of people who earn a little bit and spend a little bit, and that adds up to a lot. In fact, that is the most fundamental arithmetic of India that everybody has to understand. It's little drops of water, little grains of sand, as the old nursery rhyme goes, that forms the mighty ocean and the land. And so when I say small consumers, I mean, so for example, if you look at total ranking in terms of the size of the economy, the population, and the per capita income, which is how rich people are in that economy, you will find that a developed economy like USA, the ranking is all in single digits, right? But when it comes to India, when it comes to China, and let's talk about India, the per capita, while we are the fifth largest economy, and very soon we will be the third largest economy, we're already the third if you look at purchasing power parity. We're big and we're huge. But in terms of per capita income, which is how much does every individual have, we are a ranking of, I don't know, 127 or 30 or something like that, which means that we have millions and millions, billions, in fact, of people who earn and spend a little bit each that collectively adds up to a lot.
You highlight how millions of small transactions in India add up to a massive consumption story. So how do these small transactions contribute to India's status as one of the largest consumer markets in the world?
I think the aggregate numbers, right? When you add up all these little things, and therein lies the pain of India also. So if you look at let's take our digital economy that we are proud of. I mean, today India is the first, the second, or the third largest on any count you pick. Right? I mean, pick anything, we will be in the top three, if not the top. But if you look at, let's take our digital stuff. I mean, the average UPI value that we're all doing is very small. Panwala, sabji walas with sabji walas, they're all little amounts of money that add up to a lot. So I think that's the main pain of the structure story of India is, so for example, Western multinationals are used to dealing with large markets of a few rich consumers. We're a large market of many not so rich, rather modest income consumers. So your whole business economics doesn't work. If you are geared, if you have built your business models, as many of them have, for markets like the US and even Europe, or the UK, which has a few people that earn and consume a lot each, that adds up to a lot. In India, it's exactly the opposite.
In your book, you mention that India is served by millions of small suppliers who are deeply connected to their customers. How have these small suppliers driven innovation, and what role does customer intimacy play in this growth?
Gosh, that's a difficult question to explain. So first, I'm going to invite all listeners to feel it. I mean, if you go to your nearby Pani Puri wala, look at how much he's changed. Yesterday, some overseas visitors that I had from America went to a small street shopping arcade in Santa Cruz. And they said, "Oh, we had Pani Puri." And I said, "Oh my God, you risked Pani Puri before you went on a flight?" And they said, "Oh, it's made with Bisleri." If you look at the evolution of the chartwala, I mean, I think he's evolved every which way. Now he has disposable spoons, disposable plates. The small chart has become the big Raj Kachori. I mean, you name it, it's there. You go to, and I'll talk about food just for a minute, and you go to any of these food spots or small shops or whatever, they have just evolved and evolved and evolved. They know that people are eating smaller size things, they're less oil, even the pav bhaji that used to be dripping with butter, now they give you the option to make it with less butter. So I think if you look at the clothes shops, or my favorite example is also the ladies who used to do mehndi earlier at weddings. So very quickly, they have also realized that there are lots of foreigners coming to India, and people don't know how to drape saris. Even the Indian bride and groom the bride often doesn't know how to drape saris. So they've quickly diversified their portfolio to include sari draping services. And then they realized that a lot of Western men don't have a cultural problem with मेहंदी, क्योंकि कोई उनको बचपन में नहीं बोला कि तुम्हारे हाथ पे मेहंदी लगी है, क्या तुम जाके ये कर दो. So they get mehndi on tattoos. They get it here. They get it here. They get it on the small of the back. They get it on their earlobes. So they have now black mehndi that works as tattoos for the men. So you look at the way they continue to expand their market. Now they're bringing a little bit of costume jewelry, because costume jewelry is cheaper, and they're basically getting the upside of it. So where do they see these opportunities that big companies often don't? Or, for example, there used to be a small chai wala outside Ahmedabad airport many years ago. And he said, tea with sugar, 5 rupees, tea without sugar, 8 rupees. And what did he understand? He understood, obviously, that if you are saying, I don't want sugar, then you are very particular about not having sugar. And so you will pay that premium, and look at his margins, because he's not even adding the sugar. So, I mean, I can give you millions of these examples of big, medium, small. Or if you go into a supermarket in a small town in the Nilgiris, you will find hundreds of local brands of the kinds of spice mixes and powders that I have never seen before. And you get palm jaggery, the packaging quality is improved. So I think they have their ear to the ground in many ways. Just walk down Crawford Market. Look at the whole fashion jewelry business. I mean, today I wonder why I'm wearing real jewelry, because the fashion jewelry is so good, so cheap, it's metal. The designs are perfect. In fact, I'm taking designs from there and taking it to my jeweler, because I'm stupid. And I say, ki yaar, isko thoda sa gold and diamonds mein bana do. Okay. And now I'm saying, why do I even need that? Right? Because the local guys, and they're calling it, they've also understood destination weddings, and they're saying no one wants to take real jewelry. So they are making copies of your real jewelry. So there are just zillions of examples of, and I'm not even talking about the B2B services, the guys who are able to, or, if you look at someone called MyGate, I mean, MyGate is doing condominium management services cheaper than the other guys. There's somebody else I know who has a Salesforce.com knockoff for Salesforce, or knockoff is the wrong word, I think, is a more aligned to India Salesforce.com type software. So they're just innumerable examples.
How has India's growing digital infrastructure enabled the small transaction economy? And what role does technology play in facilitating millions of unique transactions every day?
Hmm. I think the big problem we've had so far is if you want to serve India's mass market, the big problem companies have had, which I alluded to earlier, is that the consumer is a monster consumer. The consumer says, I want the best possible. That I will stretch for more. I will not settle for less. If you say, यही आपकी औकात है, यही use करो, आप moped use करो, हमारे बच्चे हरगिज नहीं use करेंगे. Right? They say, we'll wait till you can afford a motorcycle pop, or we'll wait till you can afford a second-hand car. So the consumer wants a higher demand for acceptable products. The threshold is higher. Their affordability is lower, and companies want a profit. How do you square the circle? You can't, right? Unless you crash costs and unless you innovate. So earlier you had to do a lot of physical innovation, which was real product innovation services, which was also hard. But now with the rise of the whole digital power, we are finding that companies are able to crash costs by digitizing every process. In the old days, if you wanted to do a KYC for a customer and sell the customer an insurance policy, you had to come 3 times. Now you do e-KYC and get on with it, right? In the old days, if you were an airline, you had to have airline offices where people would come. You had to have staff. You had to do all those things. Now you don't have to have any of it. All of rural banking, for example, has now gone Aadhaar-enabled payment systems where there's a human being or a shop that forms an extension of a bank branch. You go to somebody's place and then you do all the biometrics needed. You ping Aadhaar, that pings his bank account. And this human ATM can go to 5 villages at a time. So we're able to do things both more efficiently, and customers also like it. In fact, Indian customers, especially the modest income consumers, what they like about digital is that all remote or digital services, the computer doesn't discriminate. Do you speak English? Are you wearing a dhoti or are you wearing denim jeans? Can you do this or can you do that? Right? Human beings tend to discriminate. So the consumer wants it. The company likes it because it enables profitability. And the other thing is that India has a very long tail. What I mean is that you don't have all the money sitting in metros. If you only do metros, you will miss half of even the moneyed class, leave alone the not moneyed class. They're sitting in little villages, they're sitting in small towns. Somebody has an auto agency in a third tier town who's actually quite a reasonable amount of money. So I think it just makes it easier for them to mop up these little pockets of demand at prices that make it worthwhile. And that is actually the magic. It's really Silicon Moksha. It's digital Moksha for us because it has opened up so many possibilities in so many ways. Everybody wants it, except that it's not cheap. You still have to hang in there and make money. There's no instant karma कि अभी digital model लगा दिया, startup कर दिया कि 2 हफ्ते में I will make a profit. You won't, but it's a path.
Yeah. Very insightful. Mrs. Bijapurkar, you dismiss the oversimplified view of India's demographic, calling it complex and diverse. So, what are some of the key complexities that businesses need to understand when targeting Indian consumers?
So one is what we just talked about, that rich people live in big cities, poor people live in small cities. Not true. Rural India is poor, urban India is rich. Not true. Half of the rich people live in urban as well as rural, and rural don't even pay income tax. So you're better off. Not that a lot of urban does either, but still. Then, for example, the idea that this whole young India is all about entrepreneurs and startups and people who don't want regular jobs. Actually, the demographics, and this is the bit that upsets me the most because we dismiss young India. We look at young India based on our children and we say they're fine. But actually, young India mimics the demographics of the country, right? Most of young India is rural and poor. Many of them are first generation educated. They don't have a lot of parental support. Parents are supportive but don't have the financial worth to be able to support their dreams. If our children say, I want an unpaid internship in this place and it's very good for me, we'll say, Jao beta, and as long as you do it well, I will take care of you. A lot of the young don't have that. What they want is government jobs. What they want is to join the army sometimes. What they want is a steady job close to home with a profession to go with it. So I think that's another issue. Another problem of demographic assumptions. So this whole demographic dividend, I think we have to think about, that has often been discussed. The other problem I sometimes think is that we think of rural India the same way we complain that the Western world thinks of us. You know, that you're 10 years behind time, but we're actually leapfrogging, right? We're leading the world in digital infrastructure. We're showing people certain kinds of innovations. We're lagging in some ways, leading in some ways. Similarly, we think that rural India is a bunch of villagers and that the urban are smart and the rural are not. So people keep saying, when will rural India be ready for whatever, the digital economy, whatever? And I'm saying rural India is already ready, right? It's also leapfrogging the way we leapfrog. So there are many such assumptions, and I think the biggest problem with demographics is that we would like to think that India is richer than it actually is, which is what I say in my book very clearly. And every time I go to meetings and they show me data on how rich, our target group is people who earn 50 lakhs and above. And I'm thinking, where are these people? Where are you finding them? And they're thinking, when they look at my demographics, that no, 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 this is not true. And so what I say is that this is my income distribution. If you multiply the number of people and the income I have, and just do the math, you will get to the personal disposable income number that the government of India puts out. वो GDP को लेके you derive the personal. So if that is the total pool, and these are the total numbers, it is what it is. So we would like to be richer. We would like to believe that everybody is upper income, but the richest 10% of India are a little a bit above the poverty line of America, not a whole lot. Right. Similarly, if you look at we're number five, let's say, in the total GDP. But look at the per capita income of number four and number six. It's so much bigger than ours. So that's the demographic thing that I go a little bit to war with in the book. And we're not very well educated either. So you think everybody went to college. Most people didn't go to college. But literacy, everybody's literate. Everybody has some schooling. Thank you, Sarva Siksha Abhiyan. But we're not as educated and as rich, but we're super smart. So the whole country, and so poor is not backward. The whole country has learned to use a mobile phone and a smartphone. Educated, not educated, doesn't matter. Isn't that amazing?
Very insightful, Mrs. Bijapurkar. How do you foresee India's consumer economy evolving in the coming years? Are there any emerging trends or shifts that businesses should be paying attention to?
Incomes will steadily go up, but we're not going to suddenly transform into a high income country. So I think businesses should understand that there will be so far post COVID, we're also seeing a trend which is the rich getting richer, which surprises a lot of people. People say, how do you explain it? And I'm saying that where is the question of explaining this? Uh, if you have a profession, if you have an education, if you have a job where you can work remotely from, then obviously you made money during COVID. If you are not doing that, then if you are then you are not physically able to go to work. Those who are smart, like some yoga teachers, very quickly said, I will do online. Many took some time to get to online because they have only one phone in the house, and that's used for your child. The school fee is still needed to be paid for your child. So I think people were under severe amounts of stress. So one of the trends is that we're not going to get richer in a hurry. We're always going to have this kind of a demand structure. The rich will get richer. The creamy layer is there. So a lot of companies say, why do I need the modest income? I'll take the top 20%. That's good enough for me and I will make money. I think that is a strategic choice. You're welcome to make it. But if you think that the mass markets are going to sit around and wait for you, they're not. They're like time and tide. They will not sit around and wait for you. So I think what we're saying, and you can actually see that because the big companies have left the space to the small ones, they've got leaner, meaner, fitter, packaging quality has got better, they're more customer intimate. Um, Big companies and FMCG companies in their annual or in their quarterly result discussion say that we are having a lot of trouble from local competition. Once upon a time, we used to say this is unorganized sector. Well, unorganized is disorganized. So we will only compete with the organized sector, and that all consumers will grow up from unorganized sector to organized sector. But now they are growing up and staying there very happily. And some of the high end products are also artisanal brands, small brands that are happening. So I mean, you go onto Instagram and it's shocking how many brands of perfectly wonderful stuff there is. So I think large companies have got to understand that the small world is not the unorganized world, and that it is also teaching consumers what is available at what price. So respect them more. That's part one. Part two, I think, is just this whole love of the digital economy that India has and the power of it. So if you look at marketplaces, which I'm saying is going to be a very important future, provided uska policy se gala na ghote, uh, also if you don't end up burning VC money doing foolish things. So a marketplace in Amazon's a good example of it. And every other marketplace also we see there are marketplaces for every category, there's Udan and so on. It is aggregating small suppliers. So it's giving small suppliers the breadth and width that earlier you couldn't get. And now I'm told with quick commerce, even if you're an unknown FMCG brand, you can get in and you can actually pain the other big brands a little bit. So you are actually finding that the marketplaces are aggregating small users, they're aggregating small buyers, they've got digital in the middle, they're offering you guarantees of, in the old days, what was a retail brand. So your small guys are actually having much, and now with other initiatives the government is planning, I think the small guys will actually start grabbing small parts of the economy. And you say, well, what happens? They won't scale. Yeah, that is a problem. But I've also noticed that two sets of guys will die, another two will come. Another two die, other two will come. But the total amount of competitiveness continues to be the same. So I think companies have to decide whether they want the mass market. If they want the mass market, they have to hurry up and get there. And I think the idea that there are many Indias that exist and these Indias are diverging. Once upon a time, the minute you start look at our politics, right? Even our politics has gone regional. I'm about to go to elections in Maharashtra, and it's regional party one versus regional party two, collaboration one versus collaboration two. Plus, now with the internet also, I think we're all able to go much more parochial, much more local, the groups we belong to. If I log on to Amazon, I can get exactly the same rice that my mother ate in Andhra Pradesh. So I think the fragmentation is pretty large, and fragmentation causes more complications. I think companies should know that. Companies should also know that India's consumers don't evolve as in I will leave this and I will go to that. The language of evolution in India is and, there's no or. And I will transact with you digitally. And when I get upset, I will come to your branch office and I will scream. And if I happen to be near an ATM, I will take the paisa for that. So there's a very nice article that someone sent me, an anthropologist called Simon Roberts, and he talks about how his studies based on how Indians are using apps and so on to book hotel rooms. So app se pura price discovery kar lo, then you go, so you keep four reservations pending, then you go and you physically check them out, and then you're going to cancel three, right? We are all searching in a shop, we find the price, we go into Amazon, we get that price, then we come back and we say, okay, you give it to me, but you have to throw in service, and this is Amazon price, match it. So I think that is where the future is going. It is a more sophisticated, more aware consumer who is also more difficult to serve. So I think companies have to make choices. They have to have portfolios. Because as you can see right now, so far, urban India was doing very well. Suddenly now they're saying, oh, urban is in trouble because of inflation and all. Rural India is doing very well. So where will we go running from segment to segment at the last minute? So you have to run a portfolio. That's my take.
Very nice. How important is data in understanding and tapping into India's smaller consumer segments? What role does data analytics play in shaping consumer behavior and consumption pattern in India?
Data analytics doesn't shape behavior. Companies shape behavior. I think also that we underestimate how much companies shape behavior as much as consumers shape companies. But I think the data analytics really helps you. A lot of assumptions I find that businesses have are akin to smoking dope. I mean, I think, where did you get this assumption from, right? So, what analytics tells you honestly is it shows you exactly what is going on the ground. so that you can understand. You can understand whether, for example, the one question that I often miss when companies give me their reviews, either when I sit on the board or otherwise, is who is buying. What is being sold, so everybody tells. Oh, the motorcycle, once upon a time, they used to say motorcycle segment is taken over, scooter segment is declined. And I'm thinking, has the need for family gone away that people all go into motorcycles, the bacha in the front, the wife and the child at the back? Or is it just that scooters, for some reason, are not delivering the economy that's required? And sure enough, over time, when someone does a good scooter, then it comes back, and then that's like good news all over again, right? So similarly, I think so. Data analytics tells you what is going on, who's buying. When you say, "Oh, the industry is slowed down," I'm saying, "Oh, what the first-time buyers of cars have vanished." I'm saying, have they vanished, or is it that our children are buying more cars because nobody else can afford it at this moment, and our children are used to already having a certain level of cars and they don't want to buy a rubbish car? We don't know. So I think you should shine the light on, as I say in my book, I borrow a phrase from a biologist, Thomas Huxley, and he says, "Let us slay beautiful hypotheses with ugly facts." And I think that's the purpose of data analytics, is both as a guide. First, it tells you what you're thinking wrong, which you had better correct, because if you build an entire strategy based on a bad foundation, the building will collapse. Secondly, it's also giving you an input into where the trends are and what is actually happening. Is there more credit delinquency among younger people? If there is, then you're going to find more and more credit delinquency. They don't say हमारा relationship है, उसका आंख का शर्म है, he will not want his vehicle repossessed. So it guides you in these directions. So I'm all for data. But the data school also has to have respect for other schools of decision making. So I used to teach a course at IIM Ahmedabad, which had one module of neuroscience, one module of anthropology, and one module of big data, and run it with the common business problems. So there are psychological foundations of behavior, there are cultural foundations of behavior. Data gives you the behavioral foundations, the behavioral inputs into what is going on, and you have to learn to put all of them together to make a decision. That's what managers get paid for.
How do you think government policies, economic reforms, and infrastructure development have impacted India's consumption story? How can government further support this growth?
I have the last few days been upsetting all my friends by saying that the government of India is not your marketing director. So don't say that, oh, sales are low, government GDP is low. The government's job is not to create the hawa which will make your sales graph push up, right? That's not the government's job. But I think what the government's job is, certainly it helps if governments can cut taxes, if they can put more money into people's hands, if they can cut excise duty, make your products cheaper. But governments have to do what governments have to do, right? So I think the job of the government, we've seen every time you have roads, once the Golden Quadrilateral came, I mean, look at the huge changes that happened, right? The minute you have roads, the way people behave changes, the way they shop change, their occupations change. The minute you have electricity in a village, a lot of things change. If you have running water inside homes, like for example, my household help does not want to stay the night and earn more money because सुबह 5 बजे पानी आता है. So I think so productivity is low, right? The minute you've had gas, Ujjwala, I mean, people say, oh, what's the point? They can't afford to buy it regularly. But that's not the point. In the morning, if you can make the 5 chapatis very quickly so that the family's tiffin dabba is tied up and you can get to work on time so that you have a job, I mean, that is like a huge benefit, right? So I think the government's job is to continue to put infrastructure and amenities to help people get more productive. I think that is their job, and I think their job is to have and I think while a lot of people say that the push for inclusion is like a bit much, if we had not had the Jandan Yojana, if we'd not had the push for inclusion, if we'd not had micro insurance, if we'd not had the government saying, I don't care, I want this done, I don't think businesses would have found a way to do what they have done now. So I think that is the job of the government, and I think our government's doing a pretty damn good job of that. Or if you take UPI, for example, and I was on the NPCI board for a while when this was happening. So I got a ringside view of it. So we can transfer money now without paying anything below a particular limit. But now everybody has got with the program, right? And can you think of how much efficiency it has brought into the system? Um, what does it do to promote consumption? What it does to promote consumption is that in many ways you can do what you can do and you can do it quicker. And as a result of which, either you have time to spare to get into earning or you can do things faster. If I go for a walk with my cell phone and I find a really nice something to fruit wala to buy, who's closing down as nice fruit, I can buy immediately without saying, "Arey, I left my wallet at home," and so on and so forth, right? So the job of the government is to create all the enablers, I think, and to put all the public utilities and platforms together. And of course, the job of the government also is to have economic policy so that we can all have jobs. I think people forget that consumption is linked to income, which I've been saying forever, that, consumption is not some magic macro variable. So, yeah, the state of the economy that enables people to work so that that work can earn them money to spend. Economic policy is a very important leg of it. I don't think it's the government's job to provide the hawa to be the marketing director. That's where I draw the line.
Mrs. Bijapurkar, my last question. How do cultural and social factors influence consumption patterns in India? And how can businesses design their products and services to cater these nuances?
So I think culture and behavior are not static. I think they change over time. So once upon a time, we used to joke that we never throw anything away. That the last thing Indians voluntarily threw out was the British. That used to be the joke. Okay, we would recycle cigarette lighters, we would recycle everything, we do that. We still do some recycling, but now if you look at use and throw, given that prices have come down so dramatically, I mean, we're changing. Similarly, earlier, or you're going to take debt, you're going to take credit. I mean, credit was a bad word, right? Especially for personal consumption. But now credit is seen as a little bit of the working capital of life and living. And so that has also eased itself. So I think companies should start looking at changing trends and understand. Or back to the other example I gave, which my friend Ramesh Iyer, who used to be the managing director of the Mahindra Finance, used to say, the younger generation in rural areas is quite practical. They will say, look, I can't afford to pay my EMI, not all of them, but some of them, please repossess my vehicle. Now, if you know that's going to happen and you're going to be left with that problem, if you repossess everybody's vehicles, then you're taking the inventory risk, right? Then you should be able to reorient your systems to understand that the generation has changed. Similarly, this generation doesn't want to buy houses first, right? The richer ones, they want to rent. Or now that you can, the rental economy, the sharing economy, now that the sharing economy has come, it's exactly the way it used to be in the past, right? Like my grandmother used to get five of her friends together. They would go to a wholesale market in Hyderabad. They would buy at wholesale prices. They would come home and then they would separate it out and share the cost of the auto. Now there are apps that do exactly the same thing. So I think to look at what's changing and what's not changing and to be able to ride those trends is very, very important.
Thank you, Mrs. Rama Bijapurkar, for joining us today and sharing your valuable insights from your book, Lilliput Land, How Small is Driving India's Mega Consumption Story. Your deep understanding of India's consumer economy and your expertise in business market strategy have been truly enlightening. We are deeply appreciate your time today and look forward to seeing how your future contributions continue to influence India's evolving business landscape. Thank you so
Thank you
much.
very much, Deepak and listeners. Thank you very, very much. Thank you.